What's up, Flounders? It is time for Week 13, Sunday Night Football. The season is just flying by. We've got the Commanders and the Broncos playing tonight. I'm going to be, as usual, going position by position, breaking it down for NFL Showdown. DraftKings can take a look at FanDuel if you're interested. I'll be going position by position again. Quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, defenses, kickers. At the end, I will make my lineups for the DraftKings slate right here on the stream. You can watch me make my lineups, see the adjustments that I make. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those questions as we go or at the end, however you want to do it. How's everybody doing? Megatron says he's here for big bellies. You're in the right place if you like big bellies. Yes, Dirt McGirt says Minnesota sports bad for our mental health. I mean, do we really think this is going to go any different? I had hope that maybe Brosmer was going to be better than expected, but this is a really tough spot for a first start against Seattle. Didn't have a ton of hope there. Rim Sim says, sends me a super chat, which I very much appreciate. Your JJ McCarthy transgressions are forgiven within the Ask God's performance, that being Adnan Mitchell. For anybody who's not familiar, it's a fantasy points average separation score is ass at fantasy points. And Adnan Mitchell crushes ass score. So we call him the Ask God. Made decent money today. Thanks again for outside the box. That's awesome to hear. Appreciate you, Rims and Tims. I don't think I'm making money today, which feels like I should be, but I was way too high on Brian Thomas Jr., not high enough on Jacoby Myers. Just didn't quite get the stacks exactly right. So anyway, didn't make money, didn't lose a ton of money today either. Thought maybe I had a shot there for a bit. Anyway, we're going to start with quarterbacks. See if the Sims are done running. The Sims are not done running. We have Bo Nix and Marcus Mariota are the quarterbacks on this slate. As you can see, according to Roto-Grinders, they're both going to be fairly chalky. Bo Nix projected to be the highest owned captain, 22% projected ownership there. Marcus Mariota, 11.5% projected ownership at captain. In the flex, Bo Nix getting higher ownership, 62.5%. Marcus Mariota, 49%. I guess Bo Nix higher both places. I like Bo Nix quite a bit. This is a fantastic matchup for quarterbacks. The Broncos kind of across the board have fairly nice matchups here. Am I wrong? No, it's the second best matchup over the past 5 weeks in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed per game to the quarterback position. So we can certainly load up on some Bo Nix. Actually, let me pull up my article at fantasy points right now. I also delay the show so that I can look at inactives, and once again did not look at inactives, so I need to double check, make sure that I'm not missing anything as far as inactives go as we're getting into it here. So I'm actually gonna just give me 1 second to double check that. I don't think there was anything that I was waiting on that was going to be super impactful as far as inactives. We knew Terry McLaurin is going to play, or at least that's the likeliest scenario, is that Terry McLaurin is going to play, but I just want to make sure that there's not some tertiary player that I was thinking about playing. Broncos inactives, Nate Adkins is out, tight end for the Broncos. No other position players. And then Commanders inactives, Jaden Daniels, as we knew. Nobody else, no other position players. So we don't have any surprise inactives, nothing there that's going to affect anything. But let me I pulled up my article so I can read off Bo Nix. Yeah, Commanders defense, second most schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed per game. Broncos offense also seventh in pass rate over expectation on the season. So they're actually throwing it quite a bit. And it's a nice spot. So Bo Nix looks awesome. Again, I have him. He's projected to be in 84% of lineups. I'll probably have less than that. Let me see what the Sims are giving me. I anticipate that I'll have a little bit less than that. No, I don't. Right now I have 88% in my lineups. I don't think that it's something that I'm going to intentionally get away from. I'll maybe get to less Bo Nix as I try to get to more of some other players on the slate. But he looks great. The Broncos are favored to win the game. Let's see what's the inputs. Yeah, 24.75 implied team total, 6-point favorites over Washington. Everything sets up well for Bo Nix. And then we also have Marcus Mariota on the other side, 10,200 projected for 55 and 10 at captain ownership. I got to 36 and 7, not nearly as much Marcus Mariota. The implied team total just a lot lower on Washington. The matchup not nearly as good for Marcus Mariota. it is the second worst matchup. So we go from the second best matchup for Bo Nix to the second worst matchup for Marcus Mariota in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. That's not great. You don't love the second worst possible matchup for quarterbacks. I think it kind of makes sense that I'm getting to a ton of Bo Nix, a bit less of Marcus Mariota. Now Mariota does have like the rushing ability to put up kind of a big game on the ground. I think they're actually fairly similar quarterbacks. Maybe Mariota a little bit more rushing upside. I think he does have more rushing upside than Bo Nix, but neither of them is like on average putting up a ton on the ground. But then they have their spike weeks on the ground. On the season, Bo Nix averaging just 19.4 rushing yards per game. Is down from last year. He does have 3 rushing touchdowns in 11 games. Mariota, it's sort of hard to break down his rushing because he's played in 7 games, but he's only started 5 of them. But he's actually had some of his better rushing games in games that he didn't start. So I just wrote it up as on average this season in his 7 games, 27.6 rushing yards, has 1 rushing touchdown on the season in 7 games. Again, he only started 5 of those games, but I think last game had 49 rushing yards. Clearly has the ability to put up big games on the ground. So I think as far as stacking the quarterbacks, so good. I like both of them. I might end up getting to more Mariota than I'm getting to right now as I make some adjustments, but I'm generally okay with these, like being well over on Bo Nix, a bit under on Marcus Mariota. Seems fine to me if these are the projected ownerships. As far as stacking goes, I think you can, like, it's borderline if you need to stack these quarterbacks. I think for the most part, when I have them in my lineup, I'm going to have both of these quarterbacks stacked up with at least one pass catcher. I think you can in some lineups play naked Marcus Mariota or naked Bo Nix and just hope that they rush for a touchdown and spread the ball around. But for the most part, I am going to be stacking. And for the most part, when I have them at captain, I want them to be stacked with multiple pass catchers. Again, not a hard and fast rule. I think you can get away with playing one of these quarterbacks at captain with just one pass catcher in the flex. But most of the time, they're not rushing quite enough that they're likely to pay it off with just one. I don't know. I think it's totally viable to play them with just one. As I'm thinking about it more, like the rushing upside is enough that you can clearly play these quarterbacks in the captain spot with just one. A lot of the time, I'll still have multiple pass catchers in the flex when I have these quarterbacks at captain. I think that is it as far as the quarterbacks go. We've talked about the rushing. Not really all that much you need to say about quarterbacks. They're going to look good on most slates, but Bo Nix set up much better here than Marcus Mariota. All right, let's move on to running backs. Running backs is where it gets really interesting for me. I think that running back is pretty fun today. I think I'm going to have a lot of the running backs on this slate. I'll check in on chat. Today was not kind. Sorry to hear that. It's cheap quarterback every week. No need to play Darnold. Darnold didn't do all that great today. Looked like Josh Allen is kind of starting to have a game today. Trevor Lawrence looked awesome. I like that. That was my big play of the day, was playing a ton of Trevor Lawrence. 2 touchdowns in, I think, the first quarter, and then didn't do much the rest of the game. That was kind of disappointing for me. Who else did well? I guess Jacoby Brissett had a big game, who I also liked. My lineups die in the second half, had a lot of Lawrence. Yeah, exactly. Same thing to me. Nivorin says I have way too much Harvey. I think I'm going to have way too much Harvey also. Seahawks defense made my day. Gary says that's good to hear. I really like the Seahawks defense. I did not make adjustments to defenses enough. Only ended up with 10% of the Seahawks defense, which was, I think, right with the field, maybe even under the field. So kind of disappointed in myself for not making adjustments to the defenses, because it was kind of an obvious one. But grats to you for playing it. All right, let's get into the running backs. So RJ Harvey, we have just one game of RJ Harvey as the lead back for the Broncos after J.K. Dobbins got hurt. He'd had his spike weeks already throughout the year. Like he had some usage with J.K. Dobbins. But then we had in week 11, because they had their bye in week 12, was the first game of the Broncos playing without J.K. Dobbins. And here is how the backfield split down. So it was in that game, 11 carries for RJ Harvey on 52.4%. 61% snap share. He had 52.4% of the rushing attempts overall for the team. Also 3 targets on 34.1% route participation. So 11 carries, 3 targets, not like elite usage for RJ Harvey. And then Jaleel McLaughlin also scored a touchdown at the goal line. Jaleel McLaughlin only played 8 snaps. So it was 37 for Harvey, just 8 for Jaleel McLaughlin, 19 for the fullback Adam Prentice, 8 for Tyler Bidet. But Jaleel McLaughlin on his 8 snaps had 6 carries and 1 target, 4.9% route participation. That's pretty awesome usage, per snap. 6 carries and 1 target on just 8 snaps. Only had 1 snap that he did not get the ball. So great usage for Jaleel McLaughlin in that game, including, like I said, he scored a touchdown with a goal line carry. I do want to note, let me read off the coach speak on that, because I think a lot of people might have been scared off, like, oh, great, now Jaleel McLaughlin is the goal line back for the Broncos, which doesn't really make sense. RJ Harvey is the biggest of the backs here on the Broncos. So the expectation, I think, for most of us is that RJ Harvey is going to be the goal line back. But let me read off, and here's I'll read the quote on that specifically. So on the 27th, offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi said, on McLaughlin being used at the goal line in Denver's last game, he said he was in the game and it was a get back on the ball situation. Obviously, we think RJ Harvey is a little more stouter in those situations, but we have confidence in both of them. So it sounds like, if there's a break before carry at the 1 or 2, it would most likely be RJ Harvey. It just happened to be like McLaughlin was in, they wanted to keep the game going, so they kept him in there rather than subbing him out for RJ Harvey. I think it's kind of what he is saying there. So not concerned about the fact that McLaughlin got that 1 goal line carry. They thought he was capable of getting it. He happened to be on the field, so he got it. Most of the time, I think it's going to be RJ Harvey getting the goal line carries. But let me read off some of the other quotes here as we talk about the Broncos running backs. On the 13th, offense coordinator Joe Lombardi said, RJ Harvey's growing right before our eyes. Smart player, talented. We'll see what happens. But if he does get more reps, I think it will be good for him. I think if his workload increases, we're going to see his production increase and be real excited about it. On the 14th, head coach Sean Payton said, Jaleel McLaughlin is ready. He's one of those guys who's the first in the building. He's one of those guys that has no plan B, and that's pretty powerful. On the 24th, head coach Sean Payton said, Jaleel McLaughlin had a couple good runs against the Chiefs. I think that with the flow of a normal game, he's going to be important for us in this stretch of games. Obviously, RJ Harvey as well. On the 26th, Jaleel McLaughlin has played a lot of good football for us. He and RJ Harvey are both coming on. And then finally, on the 27th, offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi said, RJ Harvey keeps improving. Jaleel McLaughlin has been super productive, and I thought he ran the ball well last game, so I'm excited for the opportunity for him to get going as well. Now, it's worth noting that Sean Payton is full of shit, just lies to us all the time. So maybe I shouldn't be reading into what he says as much as I am inclined to here. But he keeps talking. He keeps talking about Jaleel McLaughlin and RJ Harvey. So first of all, RJ Harvey, I think, is more likely to get the bulk of the carries. I mean, he says obviously he's going to be. I think the fact that he keeps on talking about, like, yeah, obviously RJ Harvey is the guy. I think RJ Harvey is going to get the bulk of carries here. He's going to have, I'd say, the J.K. Dobbins role going forward, which pretty strong workload throughout the year for J.K. Dobbins. So RJ Harvey, 8,400, I think is a little bit too cheap and projected for 44% flex ownership, 28% captain ownership. Using those, I got to 50.5% in the flex, 17.6 at captain. So I'm a little bit underweight at captain, a little bit overweight in the flex. Now, RJ Harvey to me is one of the just, in a vacuum, not factoring in ownership, one of the best captain plays. Okay, it's not. Let me reset this to see what the projected captain ownership is, because I think Run the Sims has a higher than elsewhere. I would prefer to use numbers from elsewhere here if they have it lower. So Rotogrinder says I'm at 21% projected captain ownership. I think if you play him at 21%, I'm going to get to more of RJ Harvey at captain. And I'm inclined to get to RJ Harvey at captain. Again, just 8,400, too cheap for being the bell cow, which is generally my expectation, or the lead back here. I think it's going to be somewhat of a committee, unfortunately, with Jaleel McLaughlin. But I think that RJ Harvey is at least going to get the bulk of the work. Just looking at one more projected captain ownership. Yeah, so everywhere else has them more closer to 20% than 30%. So I would be inclined to play a good amount of RJ Harvey. I think I'm going to decrease his projected ownership, and I'll likely get, I would guess I'd get with or above the field if I put him at 22, 23% captain ownership. But it'd be hard for me not to have interest in Jaleel McLaughlin also, just given all the coach speak, making it sound like, yeah, Jaleel McLaughlin, he's ready. He's going to get his opportunities as well. And he's only projected for 9% ownership at 4,400. So I do think that Jaleel McLaughlin is a running back too that I am inclined to be above the field on. Stop me if you've heard this before. Yeah, I think Jaleel McLaughlin has a pretty good standalone role, it sounds like. And again, we just look at that last game for Jaleel McLaughlin. I think it was the second game he's been active on the entire season. Actually, I can pull that up. Let me pull up the weekly snap share report. I believe there was one other game that he did play. I don't think he did anything in that game. Let's see, where is it? Yep, he played in week 6. He played 10.5% of offensive snaps in week 6, only 13.5 last week. So again, only 8 snaps, but he touched the ball on 7 of those. And that was his first game in a while, only second game of the season. Then they had their bye week. So 2 weeks since then, you'd think that he's more game ready now than he was 2 weeks ago. And already 2 weeks ago, he had 7 touches. So I think Jaleel McLaughlin could have a bigger role than we want him to have as people who want it to be RJ Harvey. I certainly think RJ Harvey is deserving of a big role. I think he's been really efficient with his touches all year. So I'd love to see RJ Harvey get 25 touches in a game. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's more likely to get like 18 touches is kind of what we're hoping for RJ Harvey. And hopefully it's like 12 carries and 6 targets or something like that. Maybe he gets 20. Maybe he does see bigger than I'm expecting, but I think there's a real possibility that it's like 18 touches for RJ Harvey and 10 to 12 for Jaleel McLaughlin. And at 4,400, if he sees 10 to 12 and he gets 3-4 targets in this matchup against Washington, I think Jaleel McLaughlin looks pretty good as a contrarian play. So I do anticipate being overweight on Jaleel McLaughlin. And then Tyler Bidet, 1,400 projected for 5% flex ownership. I'm getting to 9% currently. I think Tyler Bidet, even though he didn't really do much last week, he played the same number of snaps as Jaleel McLaughlin, did not get a carry. He was targeted once in that game. But Tyler Bidet has been kind of all season. He's been inconsistent in his playing time. They like him for pass protection, but then they use him in the passing game as well. I think Tyler Bidet just like inconsistent, but does get used pretty regularly, gets at least a couple targets, gets some carries. Let me look at the full season on Tyler Bidet. I don't think his role really changes, but he's at 1,400. I think he is worth playing. Like he also has games here and there where he is can spike a little bit. Now just 29.1 expected fantasy points in 10 games. So that's 2.9 expected fantasy points per game for Tyler Bidet. Not exactly a great role. Just 2 carries on the season in 10 games, but he does have 19 targets. So he's kind of like a use check type. He's not a fullback, but like similar in like the usage. He'll get targeted a couple times per game, but then he'll spike occasionally, get 4 targets in a game, and he can get carries occasionally. So I kind of like all of the Denver running backs. RJ Harvey, again, the one that everybody wants to play. He's 8,400. He's probably going to get the bulk of the work. It's just unclear if that's going to be like 55% or 75%. And my guess is closer to 55% for RJ Harvey. So I like Harvey. I like McLaughlin. I like Beatty, or Bidet. Adam Prentice, the one I'm least excited about, but he's only 400 projected for 3% ownership. I got to 5%. I'll probably I probably won't cut him out of my pool. I'll probably play whatever little bit I get from Run the Sims, but it's not something that I am really targeting. Prentice on the season, 4 carries in 11 games, 4 targets in 11 games. So just not a great workload. You're kind of hoping for something to go weird if you play him. As far as the matchup for the running backs, it's a nice spot here. 6th best matchup in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed per game over the past 5 weeks, mostly on the ground is where it has been positive. So they all look great from that perspective as well. I don't think I have anything else to say on the Denver running backs. I like all of them. It's like one of my favorite spots to target is the Denver backfield here. And I kind of I might be overweight on, probably won't be overweight on RJ Harvey if he does come in at 72%, I guess, but I'm not going to be, I'll probably be like similar to the field. And then I'll be overweight on both of Jaleel McLaughlin and Tyler Bidet if these are where the ownership numbers come in. And then I think Washington is like kind of a sneaky, fun offense, running game as well. Now, as noted, like it's a tough spot again. Like it's same kind of thing as it was for quarterbacks. This is the worst possible matchup for running backs in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed per game over the past 5 weeks. Really tough matchup for the Washington backfield, but they're not going to get a ton of ownership. Chris Rodriguez, 6,400 projected for 19% flex ownership and none at captain. I got to 31% at flex, 9% at captain of Chris Rodriguez, and I'm for it. I think that looks great. He's a player that I think is sneaky, particularly at captain, and I am into it. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, 6,800 projected for 3% flex ownership. I got to 7.4% flex, none at captain. That makes sense to me. Like he's too expensive for his expected role, but we've seen him. He can pop off for a big play here and there on limited touches. Jeremy McNichols, 4% projected ownership at 4,000. I got to 2.5%. He would be the one that I'm least excited about, but he's only 4% owned. So, you can mix him in, hope for something, big play. He's capable of breaking off a big play as well. Looking into the backfield, and we can look at, it's sort of hard to break down the backfield for the Commanders because they've been in, it was sort of weird leading up to week 11. There were a lot of blowouts, and it was kind of hard to figure out like how much do they like Chris Rodriguez versus Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. And then finally in week 10, we started to see, actually I'm going to pull that up. In week 10, let me I'm just going to pull this up here, because we had an injury to Chris Rodriguez in week 10, which kind of threw off. If you look at the full game, he didn't really seem to take on that much more work. But if you break it down by quarter, I'm going to split it out here. Split by quarter, week 10, good. So just looking at the by quarter for week 10, we had in the first quarter, Chris Rodriguez, 2 carries, also ran 44% of routes, which he'd never been much of the pass catching back. It's always been, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, the bigger pass catching back. And then the second quarter, he again played 91% of snaps in the second quarter, had 4 carries, and also ran 75% of routes. Now that's just 4 routes, a small sample size. But in that first half, I mean, you can see he ran 7 of 13 routes in the first half. And then in the second half, he got hurt early in the third quarter, played just 1 snap before getting hurt. And then looks like he just played 1 snap the entire second half. So that was one I think we talked. I think I broke this one down for Showdown in week 11, I believe, because it was one that I was kind of excited to play Chris Rodriguez. Looking at the route participation in the first half of that game, maybe he would continue that, like running 50% ish of the routes. That would be pretty exciting if that were the case for a player that we don't think of as being much of a pass catcher. And then again, also had 6 carries. But then if we look at week 11, the following week, he was down to just 25% route participation, which did lead the backs here. So on the one hand, he still led the backfield in terms of route participation, but he was down to 25%. He also had 15 carries in that game. Ultimately, I think it's Chris Rodriguez's backfield, like primarily. I think that he is going to be the featured back on Washington based on the usage of the past couple games. But let me read off the quotes, because the quotes kind of say something different, and you can believe them to whatever extent you want. So I guess I can just read on the 20, I'll just read the last couple. A lot of positive stuff throughout the month on Chris Rodriguez. He's consistent, downhill, tough, whatever, but that's on the 16th. The most recent quotes on the backfield on the 27th, offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury said Bill Krosky-Merritt is right on track with where you want him to be. He's a young player that's still ascending and figuring the game out. On the 28th, head coach Dan Quinn said the backfield is still more of a hot hand, or how can you feature somebody on a certain play? So they're still saying that it's a hot hand situation with the backfield. Maybe Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt still does have a significant role here. Again, just looking at the most recent week, the full game that they played, it was Chris Rodriguez led in terms of the snaps, 45% of the snaps, 15 carries, 1 target on 25% route participation. The game prior to that, he again had even better work in the first half, at least in terms of the route participation. So I think that there is room for Chris Rodriguez to take on an even better role than you saw here. But even with this role at his price tag, I think he's a totally fine play. Obviously, we don't love the match, but it's we just saw two Bears running backs just crush against an Eagles defense that had looked like it was really daunting prior to that game. So even in a bad matchup, they can obviously get it done. So Chris Rodriguez not getting a ton of ownership at 6,400. Primary back, I think looks good. Ja'Cory Krasky-Merritt, I'm tempted to just, X him out, say don't play him, but he did have 9 carries in that game. The coaches say it's a hot hand approach. He saw a target in that game. Also, he's a pretty explosive player at times. So I actually like him if he's going to be 3% owned. I can't X him out. I will. I like it. Honestly, I like exactly what the Sims did here, which is I'm overweight on Chris Rodriguez in the flex and well overweight at captain. I'm overweight on Ja'Cory Krasky-Merritt. I mean, he's only getting 3%. I got to 7.4%. I think that's about exactly how much of a stand I want to take. Like I'm double the field, but not like I'm making a huge bet on Ja'Cory Krasky-Merritt. And then Jeremy McNichols, fine play, but he had a lower route participation than Chris Rodriguez in the last game, and that's kind of his role is typically as that pass catching back. So he's 4,000, doesn't have much of a role. I'm just under the field. I'm happy with what I'm getting there as well. So running back to me, one of the more interesting spots on the slate. Both teams, I like them quite a bit. So I don't do the projections, but we don't have a how many carries for Harvey. We have a let's see. In terms of the market share, Run the Sims is giving RJ Harvey 52% of the overall rushing market share, 17% going to Bo Nix, 25% Jaleel McLaughlin, 4% Beatty, 1% Prince, 1% Troy Franklin. Actually, not giving any to Marvin Mims. Interesting. So yeah, they're giving RJ Harvey just over 50% of the total carries on the team. Okay, I think that's enough on the running backs. Let's talk wide receivers. Let me take a sip of my water, catch up on chat. What's up, Jack? All right, moving this down. Wide receivers. Troy Franklin seems to be the pretty clear top wide receiver on Denver in recent weeks. If we just look at the past 4, I'm going to pull up advanced receiving for the past 4 games. So again, they didn't play week 12. And I just picked 4 games at random. To be clear, it wasn't like some great reason for picking 4 games. Maybe I looked at the route participation and it seemed like there was some kind of a trend there. But in those most recent 4 games for the Broncos, I've got to pull up Broncos. 34 targets for Troy Franklin to just 22 for Courtland Sutton, 84.2% route participation for Troy Franklin to 82.7 for Courtland Sutton. So Franklin leading by 12 targets in those 4 games. That's a pretty significant difference in the number of targets for Troy Franklin relative to Courtland Sutton. And yet Troy Franklin is less expensive than Courtland Sutton. Also 5 end zone targets for Troy Franklin, none for Courtland Sutton. 3 inside the 20 for Troy Franklin, 1 for Courtland Sutton. Just all of these support Troy Franklin is like the clear lead receiver in recent weeks for the Broncos. If you think that's a small sample, I think that's fine. If you want to play a lot of Courtland Sutton, that's what the Sims are giving me. So the Sims have Troy Franklin 8,800 projected for 34% flex, 9% captain ownership. I'm getting to 33% flex, 8% captain. So I'm underweight both in the flex and at captain, just slightly on Troy Franklin. Courtland Sutton, too expensive. Like obviously he should not be more expensive than Troy Franklin if we believe the recent trends in terms of usage. but only getting 18% flex and 8% captain ownership. So because he's getting so low projected ownership, I'm getting to 42% at flex and 16% at captain. Now let me compare that to Roto-Grinders just to make sure this isn't significantly different elsewhere. Yeah, Roto-Grinders has Troy Franklin at 8%, Cortland Sutton at 4%. So they do have Troy Franklin doubling up Cortland Sutton. And actually it's not far off from in terms of the number. And then in flex, they have Franklin 38%, Sutton 27%. So yeah, they have Franklin significantly higher owned both places. Also, I think it makes sense. So I love playing Franklin. I think when people ask me who are your favorite captain plays on the slate, Franklin kind of stands out to me, just given all of his. Oh, you can sort by shady exposure. Oh, that's awesome. I did not know that. I had requested this, and I knew they were going to do it at some point. That's good to see. Okay. So I think it makes sense that I'm getting to a lot more Cortland Sutton just because he is, again, not getting nearly as much ownership. I'm curious to see what the inputs are here. Yeah, so the inputs have Troy Franklin getting a higher market share, a higher touchdown market share, and still I'm getting to a lot more of the $9,800 Cortland Sutton than the $8,800 Troy Franklin because the ownership is so much lower. I'm curious why the projection appears to be lower. I guess it could be like ADOT related. Let's see. 19 ADOT for Franklin. 14.4 for Cortland Sutton. Trying to see what the reason would be that he's projected better, and maybe that's not actually in the projection here. Let's see. I think you get anyway. So anyway, I'm getting to a lot more Cortland Sutton than the field, a bit under the field on Troy Franklin. I don't love it because I think Troy Franklin is a really strong play at 8,800, but I think I'm going to accept it here. I think I'm just going to I think Cortland Sutton still can pop off and be the lead receiver in any given game. I don't think I'm just anchoring too much to what we've seen in the past. I think he's a good enough receiver that it wouldn't be surprising any given game that he takes on a bigger workload than Troy Franklin, and he's just not getting as much ownership. So I do think it makes sense to get to more Sutton there. And then beyond Franklin and Sutton, we have Pat Bryant and Marvin Mims. And then Lil Jordan Humphrey. The first two, I think, are pretty interesting plays. We got Pat Bryant at 3,200, projected for 21% flex, 1% captain ownership. I got to 10%. Marvin Mims, 3,800, projected for 10% flex, none at captain. I got to 16%. Looking again at those most recent 4 games, Pat Bryant, 15 targets on 60% route participation in those 4 games, so just under 4 targets per game. He's kind of an ascending rookie also, so I think probably trending in the right direction for Pat Bryant. And then Marvin Mims has only played 2 of those 4 games, only has 1 target on 29% route participation. We can look at the weekly route participation area. Pat Bryant, you see, is kind of trending up with 48% up to 56, 73, and then back down to 61. But everybody was back down, was down in terms of their route participation week over week. So I'm not reading anything into that decrease. I think he's trending in the right direction. Marvin Mims, returned, missing 2 games to 24% in week 11. He, never has been like a full-time player if you look throughout the season. But he is a kind of gadgety player where they'll use him all over the field, also gets carries from time to time. So Marvin Mims, the type of player that's it's tough. It's tough to make, to make a great case for Marvin Mims when he's only been targeted once over the past couple of weeks. But the case is just that he is the classic gadgety player that we like to play in Showdown from time to time. Has 4 rushing attempts in his past. I think it's his past 3 games. I don't think he had any in the last game, and maybe he's not going to have a rushing rule. But I think it would make sense for him to come back and get a couple carries here and there. With J.K. Dobbins out, maybe they don't trust their running backs quite as much. So Marvin Mims, 3,800, too expensive again for a guy who's been targeted once over the past couple of weeks. But I think Marvin Mims is actually a strong play if he gets low ownership. And then he's projected here. 10% is actually, I believe, higher than I've seen elsewhere on Marvin Mims. Let me double check that. Yeah, Rotogradus has him at 9%. So we're pretty close in terms of the projected ownership, both places here. I'm getting 16%, makes sense. Pat Bryant, 3,200. Like I said, he's kind of ascending. I'm getting to 10% just because he's projected for 22. Wouldn't mind getting to more Pat Bryant than that 10%, just because it is such a nice matchup for Denver. But I'm at risk of just playing all Denver and fading Washington is, I think, my biggest risk right here. Looking at the schedule adjusted matchup here, it is the 5th best matchup for wide receivers for Denver. And then again, it is a bottom 7 matchup for Commanders receivers. So Denver receivers look like strong plays. Tougher case for the Commanders receivers. Terry McLaurin is back this game after missing several weeks. And it's harder to break down, frankly, how you want to play the Commanders here. Terry McLaurin played the first 3 weeks of the season and got hurt in week 3, missed 4 games, came back, played part-time in week 8. I don't know if he suffered an in-game injury or if he was just not, fully back ready to play the full game, but he only ran 43% of routes in week 8, and then now has not played in 3 weeks. And Terry McLaurin, I saw something that he had a limited snap share today, but let me go find that quote on Terry McLaurin, because I know he was going to have a limited snap count today. I want to see it. I don't think we ever got any like specific number. I could be wrong about that. Okay, Terry McLaurin. All right. Oh, I think all we got is Jay Glazer said Terry McLaurin won't have his full reps in week 13, according to Dan Quinn. So that's what we're told on Terry McLaurin. Won't have his full reps. Let me look at what the inputs we have here are. For Terry McLaurin. So we've got him at 22% receiving market share. I think I'm less bullish on McLaurin, just given that he has not really played a ton this season and he's going to be on limited snaps. I might decrease that on Terry McLaurin. He is 8,000 projected for 30% flex ownership. I think this is a spot where I am going to adjust the sims, expecting that Terry McLaurin is just not going to be a full go today. And obviously they've accounted for it some, but I think he might be more limited than what he's being projected for, because I see that I'm getting to, so he's projected for 30% flex, 3% cap ownership. I'm getting to 16 and 6, which I don't like totally hate it, but there are spots that I like better than Terry McLaurin enough that I probably will reduce his market share just a little bit, because I think he's going to be limited here. Tough to pay off 8,000 when you're limited. And again, it's a tough matchup with the Broncos. As noted in chat, yeah, Patrick Surtain maybe could be rusty, and one of these guys can pay it off with just one big play. Certainly Terry McLaurin can't pay it off, and the sims are giving me, again, a fair amount, well over the field, double the field at captain for Terry McLaurin. But I think I'm going to cut back on that and just focus elsewhere. And then Deebo Samuel, 10,000 projected for 17% flex, 2% captain ownership. I'm over the field on Deebo, getting to 25% flex, 5% captain. I think that makes sense. Like Deebo a bit here. He can get carries from time to time, but just on the season has fairly strong workload. Again, we can pull up the full season. Terry McLaurin, 21 targets in 4 games. Deebo Samuel, 68 targets in 10 games. So just under 7 targets per game. Also, we'll get carries from time to time. Decent workload, 80% route participation. Deebo is fine. He's kind of expensive at 10,000. Again, it's a tough matchup. So I'm not prioritizing the Washington guys as much, but because Deebo's only projected for 19% total ownership, getting to 30% makes sense. I think he's a good play at low ownership. And then what do we make of the other Commanders? I'm surprised to see. So Treylon Burks is 1,000 projected for 5% flex ownership. I'm getting to 18%. Jalen Lane, 3,600 projected for 4% flex ownership. I'm getting to 1.5%. And then Chris Moore, 2,800, 3%. I'm getting to 0. Chris Moore is the one that I was most inclined to get to. And now I'm wondering if maybe I am forgetting that was there an injury mid-game last time to Treylon Burks? Because that could be why I'm thinking about Chris Moore is the wide receiver 3 here, just based on week 11. Yeah, so Treylon Burks was out. Okay, I missed that. So Treylon Burks, did he not play? Was he inactive in week 11? I think that was the case. Treylon Burks was out in week 11, and that's why Chris Moore maybe took on more work. So with Treylon Burks back, he is being projected for. I think there's volatility here, but it's sort of hard just looking through the game log to know who they're going to prefer. But yeah, run the Sims. Adam is projecting it to be 7% receiving market share for Treylon Burke, 7% for Jalen Lane, 3% for Chris Moore. That's interesting. I was planning on playing the most of Chris Moore, but I had forgotten that Treylon Burks was out for that most recent game. So it does look, you can certainly look at the route participation game log, and it looks like Treylon Burks was kind of taking over, having a better role than Chris Moore in weeks 9 and 10 before being hurt in week 11 and sitting out. So maybe as he returns, he'll move back into a bigger role here. I think that does make sense. I think the way Adam projected it makes sense. So I probably will just accept what they're giving me instead of going back to Chris Moore. So yeah, getting to a bit of, let's go back to wide receivers. So I am, again, getting to 18% Treylon Burks. He's only 1,000 and again projected for like 7% receiving market share. I'm only getting to 1.5% Jalen Lane because he's 3,600, getting 4% ownership. I'm not getting any Chris Moore. I'm debating if I'm going to change that because it's just been kind of sporadic the way they've used the wide receivers over time. Like there was the week that I thought they were just changing everything, it appeared, and then in week 11 they went back to their original receivers. You saw in week 10 we saw Jalen Burks ascending, and Chris Moore had lost his role entirely, basically. And then who else was it? Robbie Chosen, and then they went right back to Chris Moore kind of out of nowhere when I thought he had completely lost his role. So I don't know if that's only because Treylon Burks was out. It's hard, it's unpredictable enough that I'm tempted to go back to Chris Moore a bit, but I do think Treylon Burks probably the best value play of the Washington receivers as we're looking at it again. Let me take a sip. All right. So again, overall receiver, Denver looks great. It's a better spot, more condensed. You can make a better case for all of the top four. I think Lil Jordan Humphrey a little bit tough to get to, just looking at the usage for Lil Jordan. 5% route participation in week 11. Don't think we need to go there. I think all the other, the top four, Franklin, Sutton, Mims, Pat Bryant, all look pretty good on the Broncos. Washington receivers, to me, it's a tougher bet. Debo, I think, is the best of the group. Terry McLaurin, I think, is kind of part-time, which should benefit the others, but none of them look great where they're all splitting. So the Washington receivers, to me, it's a tough one to get excited about. But Treylon Burks at 1,000 doesn't need to do that much to pay it off, and he had been taking on a bigger role before getting hurt. So I think he makes some sense. All right, let's move on to tight ends. I'm going to check in on chat. Robbie Chosen is out. Okay, hang on. Oh yeah, is Surtain shadowing somebody? I can look at that. Terry McLaurin. So one more reason to not be excited about Terry McLaurin is we're projecting Pat Surtain to shadow cover Terry McLaurin. Good note. I'll continue looking through chat. Chosen is out. Yeah, I guess they have him out, right? Yeah, they have Robbie chosen out, which he was at. What was his rep participation? He was at 31% last week. Yeah, that's a good note. He had been running 30% ish, so that has to go somewhere. That probably goes obviously to McLaurin. We'll get some of that, and then I don't know. To me, this is like one of the bigger messes as far as receivers go because we just don't have this group of receivers playing together yet this year. So it's really tough to know exactly how it's going to break down. You'd think obviously Debo and Terry McLaurin are going to be the top two, but we also don't know how limited Terry McLaurin is going to be. So we don't know how much work Chris Moore is going to get. How much like do they prefer Treylon Burks over Chris Moore? It would appear so based on week 9 and week 10. But we have a really small sample again of these receivers. So it's tough to break down. If you want to go to Chris Moore again, I think it's plausible. Treylon Burks, I think, because of the price tag, just easiest to get there, easiest bet to make, and he's not getting much ownership. All right. Burks was out that last game where Moore picked his routes back up, but also Sinnott was out. And in the previous week versus Detroit, they ran a lot of multi-tight end, which ate up field time for wide receivers like Moore. Good shout. I think you're correct. You're correct. Would you fade Harvey or Franklin if you're playing one lineup? I wouldn't. I think they're both relatively strong plays. So probably in my first lineup, I would have at least one, maybe both of them. Uh, if you're asking which one would I fade, it would be more likely to be Franklin that I fade than Harvey. Favorite red zone target? I mean, it's clearly Troy Franklin. Just looking at through the game log, like he seems to be the team's favorite red zone target. And actually, that's a good note. I should let me pull up the Commanders on the season. So inside the 20 targets, yeah, I mean, Debo leads the team with 11 inside the 20 targets. Zach Ertz number 2 with 7. So those two kind of leading. Obviously, Terry McLaurin has only played 4 games. So it appears to be those 3 leading, which kind of, as you would expect. End zone targets, 4 each for Ertz and Debo Samuel. Chris Moore does have 2 end zone targets on the season, as does Jalen Lane. Luke McCaffrey out still. McLaurin has 1. All right, tight end. Speaking of Zach Ertz, he is 7,000. I mean, that's just too expensive, right? Zach Ertz, he's got a strong role, but not that strong on the season. Again, does have 4 end zone targets. Kind of need a touchdown for him to even have a chance of paying off his salary, though. 56 targets in 11 games, so we're looking at 5 targets per game for Zach Ertz. Not like he does a ton after the catch. 72% route participation. So 7,000. If you're projecting for 32% ownership and a captain, I only got to 5%. I've got no issue with that. That does seem like a pretty big fade to me. Let me look at the ownership at Roto-Grinders out of curiosity. So they have them at 23% in the flex, so a little bit better. Still over-owned, I think, and 2% at captain. In terms of the matchup, looks like it's a pretty middling matchup for tight ends against Denver. So I guess for Washington players, it's better than most spots, but still not great in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed per game. Just too expensive. I really can't get excited about Zach Ertz, especially with Terry McLaurin back. Just too many mouths to feed. Not going to score enough. Tough spot. So I'm probably okay with not a full fade, but being pretty underweight on Zach Ertz. John Bates, Ben Sinnott, and Colson Yankoff. As noted, Ben Sinnott, they were playing a lot of 2 tight end sets prior to Ben Sinnott's injury. Ben Sinnott up to 23% route participation in week 10 before being out in week 11. Maybe he goes right back to that role. John Bates, 35% in week 10, down to 28% in week 11, even with Sinnott out. That was kind of a surprise to me. I think I'd be more inclined to go to one of these backup tight ends than Zach Ertz, just because of the discount in both ownership and price tag. So I think Sinnott at 200 looks like a pretty decent play. Bates at 1,200, fine play. Sinnott just 2% projected ownership, 4% to Bates. I think they're like as far as backup tight ends go. I think Sinnott at 200 is actually a fairly. I might try. I think I'm going to try to get to more of Sinnott because Again, up to 23% route participation in that last game. Let's see what the targets looked like. One target on 23% route participation. He's only 200. We had John Bates, 2 targets in that game on 35%. He's 1,200, so a little bit more expensive. Honestly, I think both are like fairly strong plays in part because you need to play somebody from the Commanders, and it's quite possible that you just need the cheap guy who does a little bit to pay off his price tag. So I actually think they're better plays. I think I'm more inclined to be overweight on both of Sinnott and Bates than take the zero there. Whereas Ertz to me is a pretty big fade for me. Okay, and then on the other side we have Evan Ingram, who is 4,600 projected for 43% flex, 1% captain ownership. I'm only getting to 6% of Evan Ingram right now. Let me look at the route participation because I believe he's trending up pretty significantly. Yeah, Ingram, I mean, I guess not that significantly, but in over the past 5 weeks, 58 down to 55, but then up to 67, 67, and 56% route participation over the past few weeks. Let's look at what his actual usage has looked like. So we can pull up 9, 10, 11, 3-game sample. "13 targets over the past 3 games, so I guess just over 4 targets per game. Also has got some of the rushing work for the Broncos. I don't know. I think you can make a case for Evan Ingram. I mean, he's getting 4% ownership. I guess what I mean is I don't know that I want to take this big of a stand on Evan Ingram. Like, obviously, you can make a case for him. The field is playing him quite a bit, so I do think he's a good like underweight stance to be on. But he's one of the better values. It's a slightly positive matchup for Denver tight ends. Looks okay to me, but if he does come in at 44%, I'm not going to get there. He's Rotograph's projection for 8% at captain and 27%. So a little bit lesser there, but still a ton of ownership going to Evan Ingram and more of it in the flex. More captain at Rotogrinders. Yeah, that's seems like a good position to be underweight. I just don't know that I want to be at 6% of Evan Ingram. And then Adam Troutman is 1,600, projected for 2% ownership. I'm getting to 10% of Adam Troutman. Let me look at his route participation. 20, 23, and 24 over the past 3 weeks. So that has moved in the right direction with Lucas Krull gone. I think he's on another team now, right? Maybe not. No, he wouldn't show up here. Anyway, Adam Troutman seems fine at his price tag. I think as far as overall, I think my biggest priority, none of these are super big priorities for me. I think my favorite of all tight ends here is Ben Sinnott because he's just 200, just needs to like have a catch, and maybe that's enough to be your like Commanders player that allows you to get all of the Broncos in there. Followed by John Bates, and then Adam Troutman, and then Ingram, because at least he's cheap enough that if he scores a touchdown, he probably pays it off. Zach Ertz to me is, I think, my second least favorite tight end on the slate, but also like the most likely to actually put up double-digit fantasy points. So it's, kind of counterintuitive, but I think at that price tag, like he probably needs more than 10 fantasy points to pay off his salary. I think he's pretty unlikely to get like 20 unless he has multiple touchdowns. So yeah, at this ownership, Zach Ertz would be my second least favorite. I think Colson Yankoff just kind of a player I don't need to get to. All right, defenses and kickers. Move the sidebar down. Good note. A couple more points on Moore. He got downgraded to questionable today with an illness, and I think a couple weeks ago he dropped what could have been a game-winning touchdown. That is a good note. But he is active, so was ill, but he is active, so maybe he gets usage anyway. I don't know. Defenses and kickers. Will Lutz 5,000 projected for 31% flex ownership. I got to 45% Will Lutz and 0.5% at captain. Broncos 5,400 projected for 28 and 5. I'm getting to 24 and 1.5 Commanders, 3,400 projected for 10% flex. I got to 21 and 1.5. Jake Moody, 4,800 projected for 23 and 1% ownership. I got to 9%. I'd say I'm generally happy with these exposures. I wouldn't mind getting to a little bit less of Will Lutz, just because he's already fairly chalky, and I might want to spread out my exposures to some less chalky options, but mostly probably going to accept what I get with defenses and kickers here. I don't have any great takes. I'm already getting to a lot of the defenses. I think that makes sense. I'm happy to be above weight on Will Lutz with Denver expected to win the game. Jake Moody seems fine. I don't have any great takes on kickers and defenses. I'll probably just take what the Sims give me, but I might get less as I try to get to some other players. Who is the wide receiver on the right since Chosen is out? Oh yeah, so they have so most likely Treylon Burks will get the, I think we're projecting Treylon Burks to get the bulk of that, but it's going to be a rotation, I think. Like, I don't think it's just going to be 3 wide receivers out there for the Commanders. It's going to be Deebo Samuel is going to, obviously I would expect him to run the most routes. Terry McLaurin, they would like to be the other top receiver out there, but he's going to be on a snap count tonight, and we don't know exactly what that snap count is for Terry McLaurin. So I guess Treylon Burks would be my answer there, but it is a mixture of Treylon Burks and Chris Moore, I guess, and then probably Jalen Lane playing some in the slot behind Deebo Samuel. Probably lines up all over a little bit. I guess we can look at the season where everybody's lining up. So Deebo primarily in the slot, 61%. Jalen Lane, 41% in the slot. Burks, 15%. McLaurin always out wide. Chris Moore, 85% out wide. I shouldn't say always. 86% for Terry McLaurin, 85% Chris Moore, 85% Treylon Burks, 59% Jalen Lane. So our best guess, and I think it's a good guess, is that it is Treylon Burks. Probably starts out wide or runs the most routes wide right, but it's going to be, I would expect, a rotation there. It could be Chris Moore. I don't think we have a great knowledge of what that's going to be. All right, let me run the Sims again here. So let me make sure I'm going to get to what I want. Right now I'm getting to a lot of Bo Nix. That looks great. Getting to a lot of RJ Harvey. Love that. I do like both of the other running backs on the Commanders. Also plan to be overweight on both Bidet and Jaleel McLaughlin. I think I can. Do I want to move the rush rate up slightly? I think I'm going to move the rush rate up slightly. Just slightly. To 46. Can I do a decimal? Yes, I can. 46.4. Moved it up 1%. Rush touchdown rate from 34 to 35. Now, hopefully I'll get a little bit more of McLaughlin and Beatty along with the RJ Harvey. I'm already getting to a fair amount of Harvey. I think that's generally going to be good. I'd say I'm mostly happy with what I'm getting. I'm going to move some ownership from Evan Ingram. I'm going to bring him down to 38%. Give a slight amount of ownership to Sutton. Maybe somebody on the other teams. And I can smart adjust, normalize across teams now. So you can keep ownership toggle synchronized across teams. I love that. So I'm going to normalize across both teams. I was getting to a lot more. I was happy with what I was getting with the running backs here, so I don't think I need to make any changes to the running backs on the Commanders. I do think I'm going to move some of Terry McLaurin's usage. So I'm going to move Terry McLaurin down to 20% receiving market share. Bring Chris Moore up to 5%. Oh, but I also kind of like the tight ends. All right, what else can I do? Could bring Moore back down to 4. Yeah, I'm going to bring Moore down to 4. By the way, if you have not checked out Run the Sims, you can use promo code Neil to get 50% off your first payment on any NFL product at Run the Sims. Highly recommend checking it out if you haven't done so. Let's see. All right, I'm just going to get rid of this. Hopefully it's not Colson Yankoff who gets me tonight when I don't play him. All right. I'm going to run the Sims. Let's do it. FanDuel, I believe there was at least one standout play. I know somebody had asked me to take a look at FanDuel, so I will do that. Let me check in. Yeah, Surtain is projected by fantasy points to shadow Terry when he's out there. I feel like my brain, Living Large says, I feel like my brain is mooch after all these slates since Thanksgiving. It's been a tough couple slates, frankly, just in terms of difficult to project. I kind of actually like the slate tonight a bit personally, but the slate today, it was just super hard, super flat, difficult to find angles you really liked. Run the Sims does also have FanDuel, by the way. I just, as I'm having the other sim run, probably doesn't interfere with it to use it, but I'm just going to use Rotogrinders ownership to look through. I guess now that it's sortable, would be just as easy to use Run the Sims at this point. After I run a sim, Bo Nix projected to be chalky, 26% projected MVP ownership. RJ Harvey 16%. Troy Franklin 7%. Again, Troy Franklin stands out to me here. He's only 13,200 at MVP, projected for 7% ownership. That looks great to me. Sutton also fairly contrarian, 5%. That looks fine. But yeah, Troy Franklin, I think, is my favorite MVP overall when you factor in ownership. I also do like RJ Harvey, Bo Nix. I think both strong. Marcus Mariota also, like kind of the chalk MVPs all make sense to me. If you want to get a little bit different, Chris Rodriguez looks fine. I actually really like Jaleel McLaughlin as a contrarian MVP option. Not that I expect him to be the highest scoring player, but we do now have a salary multiplier on FanDuel at MVP. And Jaleel McLaughlin just really cheap on FanDuel, just 2,600 in the flex, 3,900 at captain. So if you play him at MVP, you can get different elsewhere. Sorry, you can get play all the best plays elsewhere if you play Jaleel McLaughlin at MVP. And he does appear to have a strong enough role here. But yeah, for the most part, it's like the top 6 guys look good. And then I'd say Chris Rodriguez. You could play Denver Broncos, I'd say defense at D, and then Jaleel McLaughlin are kind of the MVPs I'm interested in. At flex, again, we have kind of chalky quarterbacks. Jake Moody, 31%, chalky kicker, defense. Franklin, again, 8,800 looks pretty good, 27% projected ownership. I like RJ Harvey, 25% projected ownership at 11,400. C-Rod looks fine here, not quite as appealing as DraftKings, I'd say. But 8,400 gets the bulk of the work. Jaleel McLaughlin, again, looks great, 2,600, only getting 18% projected ownership. Really strong play, I think, across the board on FanDuel. Pat Bryant, a bit more expensive here, 5,000. Mims, 4,200. I guess Mims is cheaper than Pat Bryant here. Is more expensive on DraftKings, so Mims would be more appealing on FanDuel. Traylon Burke still just 1,000 here. I think that's a pretty good bet on FanDuel. Bidet, 2,200 is fine. I prefer McLaughlin since they're pretty close in price. You could play Bates or Sinnott. Now here, Bates is cheaper. Now on FanDuel, Bates is better than Bennett in my opinion. He's been running more routes, been targeted more, and he's cheaper on FanDuel and only getting slightly more ownership. So Bates actually looks like a really strong FanDuel play. He could. Mims could get some goal line carries. Let me look up. Let's see Mims on the season. I actually can pull this up. So if I go to can I put? I guess I can go to advanced rushing. And then include wide receivers. Okay. So on the season, Marvin Mims, 8 carries in 9 games, 0 inside the 5, 12.5% touchdown rate. So 1 touchdown on his 8 carries. So maybe wasn't inside the 5. I don't know if they have a red zone. Doesn't look like they have a red zone specifically just inside the 5, but I would imagine that was probably in the red zone. I think it's like they could use him inside the 5, like just on an end around or something. Yeah, I think that is well within the range of expectation for Marvin Mims that he could get an end around in the inside the 5-yard line. So yeah, seems fine. I think Traylon Brooks a fairly strong value. I like it. Did I talk about Ertz at MVP for FanDuel? I'm guessing I'm not going to like it, but let me look. All right, he's actually, yeah, he looks better on FanDuel. Only getting 2.5% projected ownership. He's 9,900 in the MVP spot. I changed my mind. I think that's actually a pretty good play. As much as I don't like him on DraftKings, looks a lot better on FanDuel. 6,600 relative to the salary cap. Easier to pay for Zach Ertz. And only getting 17% ownership. So he's a much better FanDuel play to me than DraftKings. Favorite single entry captain? Probably RJ Harvey. It's between RJ Harvey and Troy Franklin, just given the price tags you can get. You can put so much in your lineup with one of those two at captain. No carries inside the 10 this year. Okay. Yeah, I mean, Adam didn't give him, if you look at the run the Sims inputs, did not give Mims any rushing work. I wonder if I no, but he does have some recently, so I'm not sure why that is. I'm sure he has a reason, but he can get some of that rushing work. That's part of the reason that he is always interesting is they will give him carries, they'll give him short yardage stuff and let him work with the ball in his hands. When he's out there, he's often targeted. Huh, did this go backwards? It's generating the field now. Getting nervous about what's happening with my Sims right now. Okay, calculating payouts. It's been a while since I've had any kind of issues with the Sims, which is great to see. For single entry, thoughts on Knicks captain, Franklin, Harvey, Burks, Mariota, Lutz? Yeah, that seems good. I like it. Favorite Commanders to get to? I mean, I do like a little bit of Ben Sinnott or John Bates, but those are dart throws, so I shouldn't say that they're my favorites. I guess my like actual favorite is Chris Rodriguez. I think is like the best play on the Commanders, all things considered. His price tag, his expected usage. I'd say Chris Rodriguez is my favorite Commander to get to. I like the Ben Sinnott angle just from a what if the Commanders don't do anything all game and Ben Sinnott just has 2 catches for 20 yards and those 4 points is what you need. That's what I like about Ben Sinnott is the price tag and doesn't need to do much. But as far as like Commanders that are most likely to do something, it is Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin to some extent, but the Chris Rodriguez and Deebo Samuel would be my favorite from that perspective. Treylon Burks, I actually think I'm now convinced is a fairly strong play, just given his price tag and increased usage before being injured. And then now you get chosen out. Good for him. Kind of a career resurrection. Potentially. I mean, I guess he hasn't really had it yet, but getting usage on a better team than the Titans. All right, the lineups are in. Top lineup, Bo Nix with Cortland Sutton, RJ Harvey, Troy Franklin, Will Lutz, and then John Bates as the only Commander bring back. Second lineup, RJ Harvey, Bo Nix, Debo, Jake Bates, Mariota, Lutz. I need to look through my player exposure to see if I need to make adjustments here. So I'll start with quarterback, and I'll sort by shady flex. Getting to a ton of Bo Nix still at 88%. Bo Nix looks fine. 41% Marcus Mariota looks fine. Running back, I have 59 and 24 of RJ Harvey, looks great. 36 and 11 of Chris Rodriguez, looks great. 16% Jaleel McLaughlin, so I'm over the field, happy about that. 8% Tyler Bidet, over the field. 5% Takora Kraski-Merritt, over the field. 5% Adam Prentice, over the field. 3% Jeremy McNichols, slightly under the field. Happy with my running back exposure. I think that all looks great. Let me download these. I'm fairly certain this starts at in 6 minutes, so I'm not actually super worried about this, but I do want to make sure that I get my lineups in before I forget. If you could, please do like the video, by the way. Okay, yeah, 7:20. We have confirmed that I have time, but I'm going to get it in anyway, just because I will forget if I don't. No, I won't. I'm usually pretty good at remembering to get my lineups in, but oops, I didn't do that right. I need to download first. I'm tired is the point. I usually am on these Sunday shows, just like I'm a night owl and then I have to wake up early on Sundays and then I'm just sort of airy. What's the word I'm looking for? Airy in my head. On Sundays. So got to make sure I get my lineups in. There we go. I've got some lineups in. All right. Let me go back to. All right. So looking at my exposures, loving my quarterback exposures, I'm fine with. My running back exposures, I love. Wide receiver, my inclination was to get to more of Franklin, but because of the ownership, I actually like what the Sims did here, giving me more of Sutton. So I'm just, I guess I'm in on Sutton tonight. 29% Debo plus 2% of captain. So I'm way under at Debo at captain, no, never mind. Sorry, I'm right with the field. I misread this. 17% projected flex, 2 at captain. I'm over at flex with the field at captain. Looks great. Terry McLaurin, I did this intentionally. I'm under the field on Terry McLaurin, both at flex and at captain. I only have 11% Terry McLaurin. It's gonna bury me when I see that 40-yard touchdown to McLaurin tonight. I'll accept it. Pat Bryant, 3,200 projected for 21-1. I only got to 6%. I would like to go back and change that. Probably don't have time. I'm over the field on Marvin Mims. Over the field on Treylon Burks. Still didn't get to any Chris Moore after bumping him slightly. I'm a little bit terrified of not having Chris Moore and being so under the field on Pat Bryant. Otherwise, generally happy with how this looks. Tight end, I have 10% Zach Ertz. That's fine. I'm well into the field. 7% Evan Ingram. That scares me a little bit more because of the price tag. 10% Adam Troutman looks good. 6% John Bates. Wouldn't have minded getting even more, and then 8% Ben Sinnott. I'm well over the field. Generally happy, I'd say, with how I played that. 40% Will Lutz, 20% Broncos, 16% Moody, 15% Commanders. Again, wouldn't have minded moving more of that Lutz to other cheap players. I don't think I'm going to have time to make those adjustments. So like if I want to get to more, I can't just like move that Lutz to somebody else easily. So I'm probably not going to actually make any adjustments here. I'm probably just going to accept what I have. But yeah, my biggest fear is Terry McLaurin, long ball touchdown to bury me on the opening drive. Very well could happen. Like he's probably going to play the full opening drive. Probably going to be later on that he's more limited. But then also some of the wide receivers. I'm Chris Moore, I think, could have a role, and I'm going to feel pretty dumb not having any after planning to play him, but didn't prioritize. And then Pat Bryant, like he has an expanding role as a rookie, as you would hope for from a rookie, and but he's getting ownership, so I'm a bit under the field, terrified of it, but I'll accept it. All right, let me look in at chat. Are you winning this slate? You mean this upcoming slate or the earlier slate? Yeah, I think I'm planning on winning tonight's slate. That is my plan. The Sims are liking Burks. That was before any of my inputs. Is this a trap spot for Denver? Please tell me no. I don't think it is. I think Commanders are really bad, but it might be. I don't know. I don't follow Denver closely enough, but I think they're a relatively good team. So I don't think it's a trap spot. If you are interested in joining the Flannelverse Discord, it's free to join. There's a link in the description of this video. Do I have any winning actions? If you get DM'd in Discord by a guy who looks like me and has a username like PlayerQ, telling you, asking you if you are interested in winning actions, I promise you it is not me. I don't know that I've ever DM'd somebody unprompted, not somebody that like I haven't already been in communication with. You're probably not getting DM'd by me. So if you think you're getting a Discord DM from me, it's almost certain that you are not. I'm not that active on Discord, certainly not in DMs. So just know that, yeah, I don't really do DMs, as Spurious News says. So if you think I'm DMing you, I'm almost certainly not DMing you. But you should join the Flannelverse Discord. Let's chat in there. Join Run the Sims if you haven't already done so. Again, promo code Neil will get you 50% off your first payment on any NFL product. I will be back tomorrow breaking down the Monday Night Football slate with Adam Ship My Money Share in the afternoon, and then in the evening right here on this channel before lock once again. Good luck tonight, everybody. Let me know if you take something down. I always love hearing from you when you win money on these slates. Hopefully we can win some money tonight. Thanks, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow. Again, good luck.